a little bit more than 7 years ago, I stood up there and I gave my very first stewardship sermon ever, actually, but also at this congregation. And in it, I told you all a story of two different churches. One was kind of this ho-hum church, a congregation that gets by well enough. There are people in the pews, but not too many. They make sure that the building doesn't fall apart, but sometimes they do it with duct tape. They keep things going, but they don't stretch themselves to try much that is new. They make do with a building that doesn't always serve them well, because that's how it's always been. And they don't think too hard or dig too deep when it comes around to pledge time each year. Now, in short, it was a pretty boring story that went on for longer than I just did, and I'm not going to repeat the rest of it, because you don't want to hear that story, right? But the other story, I think that one's worth hearing again. Now, this church has been around for a couple centuries now and is eager to grow into a 21st century congregation. They have this lovely historic building and they're working hard to figure out how to make it work for the new kind of church community they're creating. They have a staff that both nurtures them and challenges them to grow. There are a lot of talented people in the congregation, and they are always excited to bring in new voices and talents to supplement and bolster their own. The folks in this church love trying new technologies and new programs. They don't spend money frivolously, because they're still New Englanders, right? But they know that you get what you pay for often, and so they're willing to spend money to make sure that their staff and volunteers have the tools that they need to succeed. This church gives away the money from their offering each week to community organizations, and the members and friends generously support the congregation as well. And when pledge season comes around, as it does each year, they always set themselves an ambitious goal. Since their programs are always deepening and expanding, that goal is bigger every year. And when budget time comes, it is always exciting to see what new programs or staff hours they've made possible with their pledges for the upcoming year. The members of this congregation love their church. They find hope and inspiration on Sunday mornings and in classes and programming throughout the week. Their children are eager to come to church each week to see their friends, and on the side to deepen their faith. They love that there are new faces in the pews and in coffee hour, and they're eager to spread the love they have found in their church out into the world. Now, 7 years ago, after presenting these two churches, I asked the congregation, some of you were there, which of these churches do you want to become? Because we were in a moment where we could choose. We could be one or the other. We could have gone either direction. But I think you can guess which one people chose. I think you can feel it here. I know I have been, especially the past few months, feeling it here. That church of vibrancy and energy and love. And what I love about looking back at this is I see so much of us in this vision and what we've become. We don't live into it perfectly all the time. We don't fulfill all of those things in that list. But we do dream big. We do love this congregation. And we are certainly growing and changing with the times. In many ways, we're living into what I encouraged you all to do in that sermon, which was to desire more for this congregation, to resist settling for maintenance mode, and to embrace all those big, dreamy dreams and lean into the possibilities that lay ahead of us. Now, 7 years ago, we did not know what lay ahead of us. think about 2016. What has happened since then? A couple things, right? We didn't know that we would encounter a pandemic and so much political turmoil on our journey. We didn't know who would no longer be with us and who would have joined us in that time. We didn't know all of the various ways our community would change. And yet, we began to cast this vision anyway, one that we have continued to build and grow even throughout all of the unexpected. Together, we have built the vision of a congregation that honors its past while embracing its future, that builds on a nearly 200-year-old foundation to open hearts, open minds, and open our doors for another 200 years. And here we are, on the precipice of making some of that vision a reality, of making our physical space align with our dreams, of being welcoming and accessible, of living into our value of sustainability. And now comes the hard part. Or maybe, I'm going to suggest maybe the fun part. Maybe. And that's making this vision into a reality. And that starts with investing. So that's what we're talking about today, investing. Investing in our vision, investing in our church home, investing in our dreams. Now, I know that this part might feel scary for a whole bunch of reasons. And the biggest piece of that is that we have to raise a lot of money, right? As we've talked about this capital campaign over the last few months, I know there's been some skepticism about whether or not we can pull it off. I'm guessing every single one of you has wondered that, has wondered, can we do it? That number, 2.2 million, is big. The consultant that we're working with said that we need to practice saying big numbers. And so I've been practicing saying 2.2 million, because that's not a number that I throw around in my everyday conversation. How about you? So that number is big. It may even feel insurmountable. Even the annual pledge goal of $375,000 may sound like an inconceivable amount. And certainly, it is true that none of us can get to these goals alone. That's not how this works. And just as none of us can be this church alone, right? That's not how we do church. There is nothing about this vision that is a solo project. And I would say that this right now, this is an all hands on deck moment. Just like those Incan grass builders, we need a lot of people bringing each of your unique gifts to make this vision real. Just like, I love this, Kim, just like these tapestries, right? We need each of those pieces, small and large, to make that beauty, right? Now I'm screwing up tech because I wasn't gonna gesture to those. But you online, just remember how pretty they are. Just remember how pretty they are. We've got these beautiful banners that are made up of these parts of different sizes and different colors and different shapes. And together they make this more beautiful whole, right? And I would love to imagine us, all of our gifts for and we've got two of them, right? So we've got like stewardship campaign over here, capital campaign over here, right? So just imagine all our little pieces coming together to create that beautiful whole. We need all of these unique gifts, right? And we've already been doing this. We already know how to do this. From that long-range planning committee that came together several years ago, who listened and analyzed, to our board of trustees who synthesized and wordsmithed, to the Building Our Vision team and task forces who turned fancy words into concrete plans, To the Capital campaign team who has been writing and planning and recruiting non-stop for the last 2 months to get to this moment. To those visiting stewards who have already started having conversations, reminding us of why we care about this community and inspiring us to give. And to all of you who have already made a pledge and commitment, and you who are just waiting to be asked. So let's come together to build our bridge to the future, to invest in the vision of this congregation and the vision of our faith. How shall we come together? We shall come together singing. And when shall we come together? We shall come together now. Now is the time, and we are the people, the builders of this vision, and those who will invest to make it real. So here are my hopes for the next few weeks. I hope that when a visiting steward calls you, you will say yes to a meeting. I hope that in those conversations, you will be reminded about what you love about this congregation. I hope that you and your visiting steward will inspire each other to dig deep. I hope that you will be thoughtful and generous with your commitment and your pledge. I hope that every single one of you will give something so that we can say we have 100% participation. And I hope that you will find joy in the giving, in being part of making our vision real. And I hope you will do all of that by May 14th, so we don't have to nag you with any calls. So let's be all in. Can we be all in this moment? Coming together to invest in our vision of a welcoming, accessible, sustainable church building, and in our dream of opening hearts, opening minds, and opening our doors for another 200 years. May it be so.